All right, we're recording.
All right, we'll get started then. My name's James Pepper. I'm the chair of the Vermont Cannabis Control Board. Today's May 31st, 2022, and I call this meeting to order. Update on licensing. Once again, we are going to be issuing more licenses today. And once again, our pace is increasing. I think we have 7 under review for approval today. All of them are social equity or economic empowerment applicants. We do prioritize these 2 groups over general applications, but just to be clear, we are also prioritizing outdoor cultivators. Last week, I gave a few examples of the pace that other states have worked at issuing licenses, just to help demonstrate that we are actually moving faster than almost every other state when it comes to issuing licenses. And we are moving faster because we genuinely want outdoor cultivators to be able to participate in year 1. But there is kind of a natural limit to how fast the cannabis board can go and still ensure that we're meeting our primary objective, which is to create a safe, effective, and equitable industry. I think to date, we've received 226 applications. Of the ones that we've reviewed, 7, as I mentioned, are complete and will likely be receiving licenses today, but 62 of them are incomplete. We've sent out emails to these applicants to cure their deficiencies. Some of them are very small issues. A handful are missing their good standing confirmation from the tax department. Some are just, they haven't uploaded a government issued ID. These are things that can be fixed very quickly and we can issue more licenses. But we can't until you do so. Some, of course, are not easy. Things like failure to meet our banking, insurance, or security requirements. I know I sound like a broken record on this, but we didn't create these regulations out of the blue. They're required in every other recreational cannabis state, and they're required in every business, period. We really cannot create a system where if someone gets injured on your property, they don't have any recourse. And we can't create a system where we set up a bunch of retail operations and they're targets for things like robberies or thefts. There's a lot of people in the legislature and in our communities that don't like cannabis, they don't like the path we're going down, and they don't want this industry to succeed. And they seize on these types of stumbles to help roll back the market. Everyone here, of course, recognizes that the fees for banking are excessive. There's very few options when it comes to insurance. We intentionally built in multiple layers of flexibility on these requirements to help lower some of the barriers to entry. If you can't get a bank account, that's okay. But what's your plan for dealing with cash safely? If you try to get insurance but can't, you can set aside some money to deal with any legitimate claims against your company. I'd argue really that our rules are more flexible on this front than any other regulated cannabis market in the country. And we're willing to consider waivers on a case-by-case basis, but please, keep in mind that us granting a waiver is going to be the rare exception and not the rule. You first have to demonstrate how you attempted to comply with the regulation. Did you call the credit union and try and set up a bank account? Did you get a quote from an insurance company? If the answer is no, then we're not going to consider a waiver. And then after kind of good faith attempt, you have to explain why whatever you're proposing as a waiver is suitable for your specific operation. I mentioned, limited or liability insurance covers losses or injuries to third parties, including your neighbors, including first responders, including our inspectors. If your risk in this front is low, either because of the type of your operation or the type of license you're seeking, you can let us know that. But it's never going to be zero. So please don't ask for a total elimination of any of our requirements. And then, of course, there's things that we're not able to waive, nor would we, things like compliance with our building codes and fire safety. I mentioned it a few times, fire safety needs to talk to every prospective licensee. Your point of contact at fire safety is Landon Wheeler. He's here with us today to kind of lay out for people what the process on his end looks like and what steps you need to take before the board can issue you a license. But before we turn to you, Landon, why don't we approve our minutes from last week? And if it's ready, also just adopt our regular meeting schedule for the summer. I do want to remind people that we have our kind of monthly after hour public comment meeting. It's from 6 to 7 today. The link is on our website. And I was going to have Bryn do a walkthrough of S-188, but the governor has not taken action on it yet. So I think we're going to push that off till next week. So Julie and Kyle, have you had a chance to review the minutes from 5/23?
Yeah.
Yep.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And Bryn, do you have a regular meeting schedule?
I do.
All
Yep.
right.
So for the summer months of June, July, and August, you've decided on the dates of Monday, June 6th, and then Wednesday, June 15th, 22nd, and 29th, Wednesday, July 6th, 13th, and 20th, and Wednesday, August 3rd, 10th, and 31st.
And those are at 11 o'clock or later?
I think that we decided that those would be at 1 o'clock throughout the summer.
So essentially, we're moving to a Wednesday at 1 o'clock schedule for until the fall, and we'll kind of reevaluate then, see if that's working. And but that sounds good to me. Is there a motion to approve, or is there a motion to approve the regular meeting schedule?
I move to approve the regular meeting schedule as the dates laid out by staff.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we can post those dates. I think our calendar is actually up to date with those new dates and times. But all right, Landon, thanks for joining us today. Essentially, you've been deemed the pot czar for Division of Fire Safety. You've been fielding a lot of calls. It's my understanding that you are up to date with respect to responding to these calls. And so that's amazing. I mentioned earlier, 226 applications have come through our door. That's, every single one of them has to contact you. But I just was hoping you could kind of talk for a little bit just about, what this process looks like from the moment you decide, a prospective licensee decides they want to kind of start a business, and what their communications with you would look like, and then just kind of the kind of things that you might issue a prospective licensee that the board's going to want to see.
Awesome. I first want to thank the board and everybody that's in attendance today for this opportunity for some outreach. The Division of Fire Safety is very much an educational-based enforcement agency, and it's always our intent and goal to educate the public to gain compliance. So thank you for that opportunity. So thanks for the great lead-in. Those are all great subjects and things that I've been dealing with for 6 years. Prior to cannabis, I was dealing with all of the hemp industry. So we're pretty well versed as the products are pretty synonymous in regards to the Division of Fire Safety only. So when one of the clients or people that are reaching out to get a license, their first step would be to shoot me an email at Landon, Landon .Wheeler, WHEELER @Vermont spelled out.gov. And the next email that you'll receive back from me is a link to the definition of what a public building is, and asking you to review if your project is going to be a public building or a non-public building. And it's tricky because a lot of people don't think of certain aspects as being public buildings, but if you rent a property in any capacity, it's a public building. If you have 2 or more employees, you're a public building. If you have certain hazardous processes that you're requesting a license for, you would be considered a public building. And at the Division of Fire Safety right now, it is my job to help guide you through that process of determining whether you're a public building or not. So if you're not a public building, and we've reached that conclusion through our communications, I forward back a letter to you that you'll be able to present to the Cannabis Control Board, along with your license information to further your process. If you are a public building, your first step after communicating with me is to file a construction permit for your fit up of your space and the processes that you'll have within your building. And that will start the ball rolling from the Division of Fire Safety standpoint. Something that everybody should understand is that as fast as this industry is growing, the Division of Fire Safety enforces 298 different code books, and we are the authority having jurisdiction for a wide range of things in the state. And believe it or not, this process is about 1% of what our overall job is at the Division of Fire Safety. We review projects in the order that they're received. So what that means is, if you get your information to me quickly, then you'll get to the top of the pile. But if your permits aren't submitted in a timely fashion, we do not have a process to expedite permits, and we review every project in the order that they're received. And it's important for everybody to understand that the owners of the buildings, the growers, the contractors that you hire, we don't permit work to start until we issue a permit. And for us to be able to issue a permit, we need to have that permit application and possibly plans or a construction site visit completed prior to us issuing that permit. We do try to get to every project as fast as we possibly can, but our average turnaround, if we have all documentation, is no more than 30 days. I believe we have a success rate of any size project that we issue a permit for of around 97% go out the door in 30 days or less. Going back to what a driver is as a public building, the Division of Fire Safety has codes and standards that we adopt through the rulemaking process. And those codes and standards are what would be applicable to public buildings. And they're in place to ensure the safety of the building owner, the people that work within the building, and to protect the life and the property that is within the building. Right now, a great governing standard that we're utilizing that guides us through the cannabis process for almost every aspect is NFPA 1, Chapter 38, 2018 edition. And you can get a free read-only version of that document at nfpa.org. If you wanted to give yourself a better idea of the codes and standards that we look at. The permits and forms can be found at our webpage, which is www.firesafety.vermont.gov. And we're pretty easy to find on the internet, and we do that on purpose. I am going to be the point of contact for the Division of Fire Safety for the foreseeable future. So anybody that has questions, the best way, again, to reach out to me is via email. It lets me track the emails that I have responded to so that I don't miss anybody. And again, my email address is Landon, LANDON .Wheeler, WHEELER @Vermont spelled out .gov. An important item is that the Cannabis Control Board will not process your license until you have some documentation from us. And if you're not a public building, that documentation will be in the form of a letter from me in the Division of Fire Safety that you can present to them. And there's specific information that I'll request when I generate that letter. And you'll get that via email or by phone if you don't utilize email. If you are a public building and you're going to have a construction permit and inspections, the documentation you're going to want to submit to the CCB is going to be a certificate of occupancy or certificate of use, and that's completed at the end of your project. So when we complete our final inspections or occupancy inspections is when that document would be generated. I understand a lot of people would like to get that document or some documents up front, but we can't guarantee that a project is compliant until the end of the project. So it's an important step to get your construction permit filed with the Division of Fire Safety as fast as possible, so that we can start processing the permit. If you know you're going to be a public building, the permits can be found at our website, and you can fill it in and send it into the regional office that covers that area. And the way the process works on the backside is when the plan reviewers are assigned those projects, they reach out to me, and we typically, if it's a larger scope project, we'll schedule a Teams meeting with the owner of the business or the applicant of the permit and all of the respective parties from their design team or other people that may be involved with their process, and investors or partners. And the reason that we're doing that is so that we can have a consistent approach throughout the state, and all of our plan reviewers will learn through this education process to be able to assist everybody. So we, if it's a smaller project, you may just have a request from a fire marshal to come out and do a site visit. They'll come out, they'll complete an inspection, and they'll provide you with some documentation that you'll be able to provide to the CCB for your license. But in any case, you're going to be looking for a conditional occupancy or an occupancy certificate from the Division of Fire Safety as your documentation to further your license. I think that's about it. So I am currently caught up. I have 5 more letter requests to review, and I will be 100% caught up over the long weekend. Do understand that myself and all of the division staff try to reach back out to everybody within 24 to 48 hours. We think that's a reasonable time to get back to people. And I only need 1 email per applicant, and I will get back to you. So give it a day or two. Sometimes if I get 6 or 7 emails within a 12-hour period, those tend to get mixed up, and I'm not sure if I'm talking to multiple people in regards to a same project. And as I'm the only person that is processing these at this time, the amount of emails that I have to scroll through and either remove from my tracking can become cumbersome, and that takes time away from everybody else. So 1 email or 1 phone call, and I promise I'll get back to you. I don't think I've missed anybody yet because I haven't gotten any angry emails about that. So I think we're doing pretty good.
I appreciate that. So just to kind of do a quick recap is start early, especially if you know you're a public building. If you're leasing your land or if you're part of a larger property, start early. Get this permit the permit application in, schedule your meeting, and you know, the thing that we want to see at the board is either that kind of non-jurisdictional letter that you talked about if you're not a public building, or the final permit, the certificate of occupancy or the conditional occupancy permit.
Yeah, let's talk about that real quick. So there's some, if you're a larger project, you're gonna already probably have designers as part of your team, and designers cost you money. So what I've suggested to anybody that has a larger project and has designers of record already on board, or you're going to bring them on board, is to reach out to me and schedule a Teams meeting, because it is, like I said at the beginning, it's my job to educate, and I educate on multiple different levels, and I will assist your design team with the code paths that we're going to be reviewing these projects on, to try and make things as easy as possible for both you and your design team of record. If we have larger scale projects that will have multiple operations within a single building, it's not uncommon for us to do a phased in approach to a project, and each phase of that project project, and I'll get a little bit more in depth, will be provided with a C of O once it's compliant. So if I had a large grow operation, and I had, say, an extraction facility or an ancillary or incidental facility like a lab or something along those lines within the same building, but you wanted to get your grow up and going, we would absolutely work with the individuals to try and phase in that approach and get occupancy for each one of those phases, so that you could move forward with your process. But it would be a condition that the other phases get occupancy certificates as they move forward.
It's great. I really appreciate all the time you're spending on this. I mean, because you did hemp, you really have the kind of expertise that that we need. And, you're on top of it. I've never had a problem getting a hold of you or getting a response. And to think that we just are kind of pushing, probably 500 applications your way this year is going to be a lot. But thank you.
Yeah, no, and thank the board again for this outreach. My contact information is very easy to find for the public. I just want to say again, my email address is landon.wheeler@vermont.gov, and our Division of Fire Safety's webpage is firesafety.vermont.gov. And we're really easy to reach, and we pride ourselves on being available to the public and providing as much guidance as we can up front. And I've probably said this to almost every client that's reached out to me. It's my goal and my intentions for you to only have to do things once. So what we don't want to see happen is a project move forward, it comes to fruition, you're knee deep into your process, you have your plants growing, your extraction set up, and we have no documentation for that process, because we have no recourse other than to stop that process until we get permits and we can review it. And hopefully that's not will never be the case with the approach that we are taking, where the CCB is pointing and pushing everybody towards us for that interaction. But the ultimate goal is to not ever have any of you or your clientele have to do things two times. So reaching out to us and getting involved early is absolutely paramount.
Yeah, great.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Landon, can you revisit the importance of this, not just to comply with
Yeah.
rules, right? But a little bit about how the rules, the NFPA rules were built? Because if I remember correctly, there's kind of two aspects. One is preservation of property in an emergency, right? So for people who are getting licensed and investing in their business, some of these rules and codes are intended to preserve property if there is a fire. And the other is like a life, health, safety preservation, right? So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so the building portion or building preservation portion usually comes with brand new structures. And we utilize the IBC, which is the International Building Code. And that's our starting point for building preservation for new buildings. When we come to existing buildings, which has been the vast majority of processes that have reached out to the Division of Fire Safety at this point, we have codes and standards that take specific approaches to different building blocks that create a safe environment within the structure for the employees, and should limit the amount of damage at the time of a fire or an emergency within the building. And that's what all of our codes and standards are based on, is to make sure that we have an appropriate amount of time for people to get out of a building if there is an fire or emergency. And for the fire to be as contained as possible. And some of the major concerns that we as the Division of Fire Safety have, I do want to talk about, are buildings that we don't have jurisdiction on. And every letter that I send out, that we'll call it the non-jurisdictional letter, but it's a non-public building document, it does have some safety information on there. And I think that everybody that is going to grow within a residential occupancy should know that residential occupancies are our highest risk structures in the state of Vermont. That's that's where we have the most amount of fires and unfortunately also the most amount of fatalities. So if you bring in an industrial or storage occupancy within a residential building, that obviously increases the risk and the concern for the Division of Fire Safety. So bringing in grow lights and dehumidifiers and wrapping walls in plastic are all really concerning to the Division of Fire Safety. And we put a message on every letter that we send out, letting you know that, you should absolutely take precautions if you're going to do this in your own home. I don't have jurisdiction over that property, but it is my job to educate everybody and let you know that it is an increased risk and something that you should be aware of if you are going to do this within your own property. And we want to make sure some highlighted items such as your wall coverings, not creating walls with plastic, not overloading your electrical circuits in your building, hiring competent electricians to do work in your building or your house. Those are all very important first steps to ensuring safety. We, at the Division of Fire Safety on the public building side, will mandate some form of separation from that type of use from any residential occupancy. And that separation is usually in the form of sheetrock so that we can try and contain the different risks within a building and the occupancy and reduce the risk to the people that are sleeping in the building. Residential occupancies mixed with any other type of occupancies are a big concern for the Division of Fire Safety and also our highest risk, as I've mentioned before. So naturally, they get the most attention that we can get, and they are our highest priority occupancy to inspect. So if you are going to be a public building and grow, say, in a condo building, you will need to get a permit through the Division of Fire Safety, and you should know ahead of time that there probably will be some requirements that you'll have to comply with, like separation, early detection, making sure there's proper means of egress, just like if this was a standalone building that you were building new.
Thank you.
Thank you, Landon.
Kyle, anything else?
I think I'm good. I really appreciate the overview for us to refresh us and everybody listening. So much
Yeah.
appreciated.
Thank you all for letting me come and speak today. And I fully expect to be inundated with emails. So everybody, please be patient. I promise I'll get to everybody in an orderly fashion. I respond to emails the same way we review permits, everything in the order that it's received. So bear with us and we'll get through it. And I like the number of 500 because that means I'm a good chunk into things.
Well, it's just speculation, but it could be that much.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great number, and I look forward to working with all of the licensee applicants and the CCB in the future. And again, we're a very approachable enforcement agency in the state of Vermont. Our primary goal is to educate, and I want all of your clients to understand that and know that our first step is always going to try to be to educate people to gain compliance throughout this entire process. But thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. All right, moving on through the agenda. Switch to licensing. Bryn, I think you have some recommendations on licensure, pre-qualification, social equity application.
Sure do. So here is this week's pre-qualification and license register. Before I start going through it, I just wanted to remind everybody that these numbers are up to date as of May 27th, Friday. So they may look slightly different from the numbers that the chair was mentioning at the outset of the meeting. But today we have before you 3 recommendations for pre-qualification. You can see there's 480 in the queue as of today. And another reminder that the board is closing the window for pre-qualification today. So for anybody who has their application for pre-qualification in by the end of the day today, you will have until June 14th to complete that application to get all of your associated documents in. And so as of June 14th, we will stop accepting any additional materials for those applications and officially close that window. So today we have 3 recommendations for pre-qualification. Each of these 3 applicants have demonstrated compliance with the board rule on pre-qualification, and staff has determined them to be suitable for pre-qualification. So we have submission 284, that is a retail license, seeking a retail license. Submission 449, seeking a mixed cultivation tier 1 license. And submission number 11, seeking a retail license. One of these applicants does have a presumptively disqualifying offense, so I'm going to suggest that the board move into executive session at the end of the review of the license register to discuss that applicant. But in the meantime, I'll move on to license applications. And again, these numbers are current as of Friday. And you'll see that we have 7 license applicants before the board today. And I think the chair mentioned at the beginning that all of these applicants are either have social equity status or another expedited status like a economic empowerment applicant. So each of these applicants on the list has demonstrated compliance with all requirements for their license that's found in both board rule and in statute. So I'll go through them one by one. The first is Arcadia Cannabis Company, seeking an indoor tier 3 cultivation license located in Essex. Second is Snowbird Botanicals, seeking a mixed cultivation tier 1 license located in Barnett. Next is Epona Farms LLC, seeking an indoor cultivation tier 1 license in Salisbury. Next is Family Tree LLC, seeking a mixed cultivation tier 3 license in Sheldon. And next is Great Brook Homestead, seeking an outdoor tier 1 cultivation license in Middlesex. Valley Organics, seeking an indoor tier 1 cultivation license in Jeffersonville. And lastly, DP Holdings, seeking a mixed cultivation tier 1 license in Danville. So that is our list of applicants for a license that have met the criteria and that staff is recommending for a license. I can move on and talk about our social equity status before we move into executive session. So as of Friday, we had 23 applicants for a full license that indicated they had social equity status. So today we have 5 recommendations for social equity status before the board, 4 of which are to approve social equity status and 1 is to deny. So submission number 433, seeking an indoor tier 3 cultivation license. Staff are recommending that this applicant be approved for social equity status since they meet the criteria for a socially disadvantaged business applicant as defined in board rule. Submission 491 is seeking an outdoor tier 3 cultivation license. And staff recommend that this applicant also be approved for social equity status as they meet the definition for socially disadvantaged business applicant as defined in board rule. Submission number 44 is seeking an indoor tier 1 cultivation license, and staff are recommending social equity status for this applicant since they meet the criteria for a social equity individual applicant as defined in board rule. And lastly, submission number 423, seeking an indoor tier 3 cultivation license. And staff are recommending social equity status for this applicant as they meet the criteria for a socially disadvantaged business applicant as defined in board rule. And then, as I mentioned, we have 1 recommendation for denial of social equity status, and that's submission number 525, seeking an outdoor tier 1 cultivation license. And staff are recommending that the board deny social equity status for this applicant as they don't meet the criteria for a social equity individual applicant as defined in board rule. And more specifically, this applicant indicated that they qualified as a social equity individual applicant because they did have a cannabis conviction on their record from many years ago, but they were not incarcerated as a result of that conviction. So staff is recommending denial of social equity status for this individual. And that's all I have for you today.
So I have a just question about the full licensure. You know, there's two companies that use the term organics in their business name. You know, I think Kyle, you probably know better than I, but that might run afoul of kind of our, I guess you call it our advertising restriction. You know, on not presenting something that's false or misleading to the public. Because obviously cannabis companies or high THC cannot be certified organic. You have a feeling about that, Kyle? Just with your background?
Yeah, so that's definitely a true statement. I think I've shared my concerns about folks using the term organic in their business name. I don't necessarily know if that rises to the level of a consumer protection issue at this time. David, I know you've had some outreach with the Attorney General's office. I'm not sure if you're at a position to weigh in, or if we're not fully comfortable, I would still suggest us grant these folks their license and you know, work under some conditions that we look to come up to our satisfaction, just to not slow things down. But it's certainly something that I'm concerned about. I don't know if we've gotten any further information from the AG's Consumer Protection Unit on their feelings.
I can just, should I?
Yeah.
I'll just say the following, which is that the issue that these entities are likely to confront, not just for our regulations, but generally, is not so is less in what they call themselves, but in what they label their packaging as. That's where they could run into trouble, not just with us, but with potentially. And we are not organics enforcers here, the organic law enforcers here. So this won't be, I'm not speaking from a place of expertise or from a sort of assurance about what any government entity may or may not do, because this isn't our role. But with respect to using the word organics in your brand name, that could, and I think it is likely, would run afoul of federal law around the use of that term in labeling specifically. So again, you can sort of call your company what you want, but what you put on the label is where you might have some trouble. And so I think Kyle's statement is reasonable, that there's not a reason at this time to say that their name is inherently in violation of our rules, but that they may run into a problem with other enforcement entities when they try to label stuff with that name, if they try to label packaging using their brand name, and that could in turn create problems with our regulations as well.
Is that only consumer packaging that you're talking about, or any packaging?
Well, now we get into the details of U.S. Department of Agriculture organics law.
Okay.
I believe that could be a problem even with intra-supply chain packaging, based on a very quick bit of research. But I do think it applies to intra-supply chain as well as consumer-facing packaging.
So
But that I want to say to everybody listening, please check have your own, do your own compliance checks when it comes to organic stuff, because we are not the enforcer on there. The only way that I shouldn't say the only way, the way that we might step in on this is if it becomes clear that there is misleading labeling happening. And that's going to be a labeling issue more than it is just the name of your entity issue.
Yeah. So then, Kyle, you're muted.
I just wanted to stress, what David has brought to the conversation, and I will also say that, look, folks that want to use the word organic as part of their business, I certainly, and I'm sure my fellow board members agree, I'm sure you're following the spirit of what the organic program at the federal level intends to really help certain consumers make decisions at a buying level perspective, at a retail perspective. But that term at the same time is a legal term of art, at least as it stands right now. So USDA or USDA through a third party will certify you organic, and that's incredibly hard to achieve at this moment in time. So I want folks to just recognize that we're not trying to tell you what your growing inputs and outputs are at this time, but just remember that the word organic is often misappropriated because it does have a legal definition behind it. So I just want folks to be cognizant of that.
So we had a questionable name in the past that may have been misleading or appealing to youth, and we approved them for pre-qualification with a kind of conditional letter saying that if this, this company name cannot appear on your labeling or packaging. You could do a doing business as and have a different name, but this name in particular, I think maybe some sort of similar letter, if we're going to go ahead and approve these two companies today, they might need a similar kind of warning.
So so they're not claiming to be certified organic. They're using the sort of common term organic. Does it make a difference?
It does not make a difference with
Okay.
respect to labeling. The way the law works is that just using the word on labeling on a food product package is itself it doesn't matter if you're making any other representation. The
Okay.
word itself has comes under the regulation.
Okay.
Well, do we want to do executive session now to discuss the?
Yep, I do think that the board should go into executive session to discuss an applicant that we put forward for pre-qualification and a full license applicant, both of which had background check, which something revealed that would be beneficial for the board to discuss before issuing the license.
Is there a motion to go into executive session?
I move that we go into executive session to consider staff recommendation regarding a presumptively disqualified pre-qualification applicant and background check information for a licensed applicant. And confidential attorney-client communications made for the purpose of providing professional legal services to the body, that executive session is required because premature general public knowledge regarding such communications would clearly place the board at a substantial disadvantage.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. So I think probably about 10 minutes. Okay. Okay. So why don't we, Nellie, if you're there, maybe if you could put up our kind of away message. And we'll probably be back in about 10 minutes, a little after 11:50.
Okay, sounds good. I'm putting that up now.
Okay. Okay, so it's 12:05 p.m. And we're out of executive session. Sorry, it took a little bit longer. We discussed, as was mentioned, two applicants who we were considering. One had a presumptively disqualifying conviction, and we were discussing whether or not that conviction posed a kind of threat to the proper functioning of the market or a present public safety threat, which is the standard that we have to view all of these convictions through. And I don't know. We also looked at another candidate who had something in their past that could affect their licensure. So we've discussed that. We have a general consensus, I think, but we will kind of formalize that in a vote. So we have a number of recommendations from staff. Is there a motion to approve?
I move that the board accept each of the recommendations for pre-qualification, social equity status, and licensing approval, including the items that were discussed in executive session as presented to us by staff in this meeting.
Great. All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion on any of these? Nope. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that is it. Why don't we turn to public comment? We'll do it the kind of same way. If you have a comment, please feel free to raise your virtual hand. We'll start with people that joined via the link. Then we'll move to people that joined via the phone. So if you have a comment, just raise your virtual hands and we'll call on you in the order that you raise your hands. All right, anyone who joined via phone, feel free to hit *6 to unmute yourself if you'd like to make a comment. I guess we'll start with Tree Frog Farms.
Hey guys, how you doing today?
Good.
Really excited to see that the pace is picking up a little bit, but also very nervous as you know we're not just running against time and how to prepare applications, but we're running against summer solstice basically. I'm not a social equity applicant; I'm just a regular applicant, but my application was turned in a month ago. I still haven't heard anything back, and as far as I know, the only way to complete the new background check is after you guys have received and sent me a link tying that background check into what needs to be provided to you guys from CSI. So as I see it now, I still have at least 2 weeks minimum before I could possibly be licensed, even if you guys took a look at my application today. That's putting us middle of June. We're getting into July, and I don't know what kind of matrix you guys have used in order to figure out what kind of quantities of cannabis need to be grown in order to sustain somewhat of a market in the fall. But I know that if I don't get started until July, I'm looking at ounces, not a pound per plant. That's going to severely diminish, and that's even if I get a license by then. I believe that there's got to be some level of 100 businesses at certain tiers or some kind of matrix and numbers that would be required to produce a successful fall market. I'm also a little worried because I know from the beginning it's been we want to get Vermonters and we want to get outdoor growers involved in this market. We want to keep the economics in Vermont. And I think that the delay, and I don't blame any of you guys. I understand that there's legislature. There has been a lot of left-hand turns involved in this. But if we don't get going soon, what we're doing is we're opening and inviting out-of-state market and indoor market to take control and to try to save what could be a failing retail market in the fall. And I think that just goes completely against what you guys initially had wanted to do. I know in the rules there was some talk about not a pre-qualifying, but I'm failing the term here, but a pre-license kind of thing. I'm wondering if there's any magic that you guys can pull out of your hats where, say, and I'm a mixed outdoor grower only because I wanted the indoor opportunity to start plants, in the summer or in the spring. That's a next year type thing. So this year, I'm just trying to go for my outdoor. Is there any way that somebody who went through pre-qualification successfully and has an application turned in waiting approval could get some kind of pre-approved licenses just to at least start seedlings? I mean, I've got 2 days of germination, a week or two before they're ready to go in the prepared soil outdoors. So we're looking at, added time there. If there's any way that we could get those qualifying people started. And if you look at the application, I have insurance. I have an intent to do banking upon licensure. I have my land and wheeler letter. I have my good standing for my business as well as good standing for each member of the business. So if there's any way that we could get some kind of just get our plants started, well, the bureaucracy and everything plays through and things go further. I think that is basically the only way to save the outdoor season for us local Vermonters at this point. And I also beg to ask the question, I mean, I have $30,000 invested into this already. At what point am I a social equity applicant through, not only from just the whole process of this, but because of the state legislature, tying things up, waiting, not giving you the staff that you guys deserve. And also with the FBI issue that we ran into that took another left turn, I'm feeling pretty disadvantaged with everything that I've got into it. And I just I'm hoping that there's something that you can kind of do or work out that could save the day. And cannabis plants don't have THC until August when they start flowering. So if there's any kind of legal wiggle room to just allow us to start our plants while we wait for things to go through, please, I urge and encourage you to do that. I also urge and encourage anybody here in this meeting that if they feel the same way, just at least comment and say that, you feel the same way. Maybe if 80%, maybe if 80% of the room says, yes, we're in agreement that we'd like to see something do, maybe that gives you guys something that you can bring to somebody else that says, this is a critical point. We're at a critical junction in the season. This is what we need to do to provide this for people. Thank you. That's about all I got. I do have some things I've been writing up, but I'll probably see you guys later tonight for the meeting because I enjoy those. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Jeffrey is next.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Excellent. Hello, Cannabis Control Board. Hello to everyone that's watching. I hope everyone had a relaxing Memorial Day weekend. It's good to see everyone once again. I'd like to make 2 points. And first, I just want to congratulate the Cannabis Control Board itself for arriving where it's at with licensure. We know that you guys do not have the most opportune enabling statute, and that you're navigating this new law as best as you can. We see that, and we thank you for that. Congratulations to the 7 EE and SE applicants that were awarded today. We wish you all the best. And my 2 quick points, if I may, I would just like to step back and remind everybody who's watching that it does take a couple years, everyone, at least a couple years to roll out a mature adult use market. So it's important, I think, to be mindful of that. And it's also important to be mindful of the type of enabling statute that we passed. It is not exactly the most outdoor friendly. So just 2 things to consider as we proceed this year. We very much expect this to be continuing next year. So just be patient, and I just want to thank everybody once again. And we appreciate you guys picking up the pace, Cannabis Control Board, and look forward to future license approvals. Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
Michelle Chapman.
Michelle, are you there?
Sorry about that. My computer wasn't being friendly. I wanted to say thank you, of course, for everything y'all have done and the thought and effort you've put into everything. I did want to second the outdoor growing. I know for us personally, we plan on offering low-cost cannabis to cancer patients through one of the dispensaries so far. And it's really concerning knowing that there might not be any outdoor harvests, as most cancer patients cannot work. So low-cost cannabis for their symptoms through chemo and everything else is extremely important. And we fear that that's just not even going to happen this first year.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for your comment.
Thank you.
Tito.
Hi, everybody. Hopefully everyone's having a great day. I just wanted to say that I don't think there should be any additional CCB restrictions on the word organic in company names. I think, maybe once Vermont has some body that does certify organic grows, then I could see some restrictions in place. But Many of us do pride ourselves on our organic status, and by putting that in our name, that's part of our identity. But I do completely understand that you can't say it on a label and you can't make any claims that way. But I don't think the CCB should take any further restricting licensure or anything like that with the name organic. Thank you.
Thanks, Tito. Anyone else, just raise your virtual hand, or if you join via the phone, you can hit *6 to unmute yourself. All right, I'll close the public comment window then. Looks like there's no one else. So yeah, we certainly hear the kind of urgency on the outdoor. Again, our rules, require us, and the statute requires us to start with social equity folks, give them priority, but we do have the ability to kind of take the entirety of the market into consideration when we're establishing our priority. So we are also trying our best to get through outdoor cultivators as well. We recognize the kind of dilemma that you all are in. And again, we do have, I think, Bryn has been interviewing the folks that are going to be our eventual licensing staff. And so, I think the pace will continue to increase with respect to our licensure, though, again, we're moving at a very quick pace already compared to other states. So we have a meeting tonight, 6 to 7. It's a public comment meeting. There's no business of the board. The entire agenda is just to take public comment. So if you want to join that, the link is on our website. And anything else that I forgot?
This is our last, for a while, public comment meeting. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, we really needed to prioritize public comment and really do as much public comment as we could while we were developing our rules. We'll always have public comment periods in all of our meetings, so weekly public comment sessions. But as far as these kind of dedicated public comment meetings, this is our last one, at least for a while, at least through the summer. So, yeah, so feel free to join us. Tell us what's on your mind. Otherwise, I'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you all for joining.
Thanks, everybody.